Hey everybody, welcome to Warrior Body, Warrior Mind, a summit about wellness. If you are here today, you are with like-minded people ready to learn tips, strategies, and habits that will help inspire you to a real body transformation. We talk about how to take action, and my promise to you is that you will discover a habit, a tip, or a strategy that can change your life starting today. With us, we have Dr. Evan Hirsch, or Dr. Evan, as he is affectionately known. He is the best-selling author of Fix Your Fatigue, the 4-step process to resolving chronic fatigue, achieving abundant energy, and reclaiming your life. He is one of the nation's leaders on finding the root causes of chronic fatigue and resolving them. He suffered with chronic fatigue for 5 years before he achieved resolution using the Fix Your Fatigue program that he developed in his medical practice in Olympia, Washington. He has helped thousands of people resolve their chronic fatigue and is on a mission to help 100,000 more through his Facebook group, Facebook Live videos, online courses, books, one-on-one consultations, and the training of providers. He has lectured nationally and internationally on topics in integrative and functional medicine and is board certified in family medicine and integrative medicine. When he's not at the office, you can find him singing musicals, playing basketball, traveling, dancing hip hop, and spending time with his lovely wife and daughter. So my first question to you is, just please tell us about your background and why you became so passionate about helping others overcome their own chronic fatigue.
So the way this all started, I came out of medical school. I was always really interested in more natural medicine. And while I was in medical school, I did a number of trainings. My first one was in hypnotherapy. And then I learned about holistic medicine. And this was just kind of getting started. And finally, I found my tribe, and it was incredibly exciting. And then I went to residency, and I was doing family medicine residency because I wanted to be exposed to as much as possible. And a month into my residency program, I met my wife. You know, she was vibrant and amazing and social. And about 2 months into that relationship, her cortisol had flatlined and she had chronic fatigue. And she completely changed, and I couldn't do anything to help her. And I felt incredibly powerless. You know, here's this woman that I love and I want to take care of and I want to have this life with. And, you know, I got nothing, you know, and I go into this career to help people. And now I can't help this person who I love. So that was incredibly challenging for me. And then she came out of fatigue about 3 years later using sauna and some adrenal support, coffee enemas, changing her diet, doing a lot of emotional work. That was really big for her. And then I graduated from residency, started my own practice. We had a child. And then I got fatigue very soon after that. And my fatigue lasted for 5 years. And it was awful. I had terrible brain fog. You know, I couldn't remember anything about I mean, thank goodness for electronic medical records, because I could type everything in that I was doing with the patient. I could be very present with them. I could make medical decisions and take good care of them. But once they left the appointment, you know, they were out of my brain. And I could only see a couple of patients a day. And so I had to hire other people to come on, and just, you know, had human resource challenges. You know, I'm not really built to be a manager. And so, you know, some more stress with that. And so, and then I just kept learning more and more about fatigue, about brain fog. You know, I had this awful muscle pain. And I found through my exploration, I started off with integrative medicine, then went to functional medicine, and then went to environmental medicine. And as I learned more, I found out about how I really had every single cause of fatigue that I was seeing in my patients. And so in my research and through my experience in the last 10 years with folks, I found that there's 15 different causes of fatigue, and everybody has multiple causes, and everybody has different multiple causes from everybody.
Wow.
And so, you know, somebody would say to me, hey, you know, so-and-so took this pill and it made them better, but it's not working for me. Why is that? And it's just that that person has different causes than this person over here. And those multiple causes just gets really complex for people, you know, where you really have to dig in, get the data, whether it's their subjective experience, the symptoms that they're having, or using the right labs to test the right tests, and then have the right treatments to go after each one of those causes. And so that's why it becomes so complex. So I'm now on this mission to help 100,000 people resolve their chronic fatigue, because I don't want anybody to suffer the way that me, my family, and all of my patients have over the last 10 years.
I completely agree. All I hear all day long is how tired people are. And it's like an epidemic. It's seriously like an all day long thing. And I think that when people aren't feeling well, usually one of the first signs is, I'm tired.
Right.
I think it's like a sign that's telling you that something's wrong right there.
Exactly. The body is very wise, and it's telling you to slow down. It's saying something is not right. I cannot continue going at this pace, or something is inhibiting my machinery. It's like you're putting a wrench into your machinery and you just can't go. And so the body is trying to protect itself by relaxing and by decreasing the amount of energy that it's putting out.
Right, because the great American dream is to get out there, go to college, then do what you did, go to residency if you're going to become a doctor, and then get right into practice. And it's crazy. And buy a house, have a family, have children. I mean, you're exposed constantly to everything, to all of these stressors. Can you please go over what the usual suspects are?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So the usual suspects are some of those 15 causes, which we can definitely get into. And I call them the usual suspects because they are huge problems that not enough people are talking about. And they are toxicities that come from heavy metals, that come from chemicals, molds, infections, allergies, that can be food allergies or inhaled allergies, emotions, negative emotions specifically, and electromagnetic frequencies, EMFs, and then hidden dental infections and parasites. Those are the big overarching usual suspects that end up causing deficiencies in hormones, deficiencies in nutrients, which are some of these other causes of fatigue.
Did you say dental infections?
Hidden dental infections,
Ah,
exactly. So, you know, root canals is basically, is a big problem for folks where you get the root canal is creating an artificial canal, basically capping the top and the bottom, and it just allows this, it creates this environment where you can get a hidden infection that is seeping into the bloodstream that's causing problems that you don't even know about, because oftentimes people won't even have symptoms when they have an infected root canal. So that can be a really big issue for a lot of people.
do you think people should get a root canal or just have the tooth removed?
I do not recommend root canals, if at all possible. So I'd say get the tooth removed if you know that there is an infection in there. Get the tooth removed. And then the question is whether or not they need an implant. And if you don't need it for chewing, or if you don't need it for cosmetics because it's not in the front of your face, then you generally do not need to get an implant. You just need the tooth pulled.
But you feel like implants are okay?
They generally are okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad I asked that because I have some people that are getting root canals right now. And I suggested that if they could, they just pull the tooth, only because I felt that way intuitively when I had a tooth, an abscess tooth, and I just had it removed.
Good.
Yep, I just felt so much better. So it was an intuitive thing, which I think we should pay attention to with our bodies as well.
I agree.
So you have a quiz on your website about Bartonella, something I never heard of. And so I took the quiz and I have a 40% chance of having this infection. So I was wondering if you could go over what it is and how we could overcome this.
Absolutely. So I see this in so many people and it's so underdiagnosed. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that because I'd like to bring it to light. So Bartonella is an infection. It's a bacteria that is found in 50% of all domestic animals. It is commonly transmitted from mother to child through the placenta. It also can travel with insects that take a blood meal, so ticks, chiggers, sandflies, mosquitoes, so it's pretty ubiquitous. And I think that, upwards of 90% of all humans have it. Now,
Good.
but most of the time, it's not an issue. It's kept in check, like most of these infections are, by an intact immune system, the immune system that's functioning correctly. It's only when you get one of the usual suspects, heavy metals, chemicals, molds, other infections, allergies, emotions, EMFs, hidden dental infections, and parasites, that they will hijack the immune system or suppress the immune system. And then some of these other infections can become opportunistic and they start to have a party. So what happens, pretty typical situation is, somebody will come in after having a number of stressful events, or they'll have a big exposure to one of the usual suspects, and then the Bartonella will pop out. A classic example was somebody I saw last week who had a car accident. And then all of a sudden, they had all of these symptoms of Bartonella, and they thought that it was related to the car accident, but it was really the stress of the car accident affecting their adrenals, which manage their stress and manages the immune system. And then the immune system gets upended, can't do its job, and then the infection becomes opportunistic. So let's talk a little bit about the symptoms of Bartonella.
Yes.
So you don't have to have all of these symptoms, but the symptoms are, and usually people just have a conglomeration, a combination of some of these: headaches, neck pain, other muscle pain. Sometimes they've been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, low back pain, problems sleeping, problems falling asleep and or staying asleep. They'll have anxiety, they'll have depression, they'll have pain on the bottom of the feet, usually misdiagnosed as plantar fasciitis. They'll have muscle cramps, typically at night, but can happen any time of day, usually in the calves. And then oftentimes these people will have low thyroid and Hashimoto's thyroiditis. They will have the Bartonella striae, which basically looks like stretch marks, usually on the back, sometimes on the flank, on the side of the body. So you don't have to have all those symptoms. Typically, the most important symptoms for Bartonella are pain or dysfunction on the bottom of the feet, the muscle cramps, and then usually sleep issues, neck pain, mood issues are kind of next in line.
That sounds like everybody I know or train.
Well, it's super duper common because of all the toxicities that we see. And I just see amazing results when I start to go after Bartonella.
So would it be okay if people started trying to heal that right away? Like, since almost everybody has it, would that be safe?
It's a great question. And one that we have a lot of conversations about in my Facebook group right now. The challenge is that whenever you go after an infection, you have the potential to cause damage to the body. So killing an infection will release the toxicities from the infection and will boost certain chemicals from the immune system, which can clog up detoxification pathways, which can drain the adrenal gland, which is responsible for producing our energy and managing our stress and our sleep cycle and all these things, and damaging our mitochondria, which produce 70 to 80% of our energy. They're the energy source of every cell in the body. So you have to be very careful, and you have to make sure that your detoxification pathways are open, and you have to make sure that as you kill this infection, that you're binding up any of these toxicities that are being produced and that they get pulled out of the body. So it is very much a dance that has to happen. And then it's also about removing the usual suspects. So I'll find, a lot of people come to me and they're like, I've got Bartonella, I scored 70% on your quiz. I know I have it. I talk to them. Yes, sure enough, it sure looks like it. We start going directly after the Bartonella. And at some point, we'll get success until a certain point. And then it's like, we're not having success. And it turns out that it's because they have heavy metals, chemicals, or molds that are inhibiting their immune system's ability to get rid of or bring back into balance the Bartonella.
How frustrating.
It can be, but this is also why I've kind of, in the last couple years, I have people get all of their labs up front, and I make sure if there's any question in my mind about somebody having heavy metals or molds or chemicals, that I get those tests done very early on so that we don't waste any time and we can make sure that we get them better. Because my goal is for people to invest a year with me, and then they're good to go, and then they can go on and live an amazing life, and they don't have to worry about their fatigue anymore.
Well, not just fatigue, but the name of your book could be Fixing Your Life, because
Right.
it covers everything about your body, which is really interesting. And you said detoxification pathways need to be open. What does that mean?
So that means, so the way that we get stuff out of our body is that we exhale it through the breath, we sweat it out through the skin, we get it out through the liver, into the intestines, we poop it out, we pee it out through the kidneys, we dump stuff out of our lymph system into our bloodstream and then out of the kidneys. So there's a lot of different, each one of these pathways has to happen. And so oftentimes there's supplements that I'm recommending, tinctures. I really like tinctures and herbal combinations that are very potent to open up the liver and kidneys, to open up the lymph and to get the stuff out. Saunas are wonderful for sweating, making sure that people are pooping every day. So all of that stuff has to happen. Otherwise, as you detoxify, you're releasing stuff into the body. And then if it can't get out, you're just reabsorbing it back into your body again.
So is it safe to recommend these tinctures and supplements to my clients, or should they see a doctor, a real doctor, a holistic healer?
So some of them can be okay. I mean, there are a lot of nuances to it. Anytime that you use something potent, you have the potential to do good or bad. And so I like to make big shifts in people, and I like to be really safe, and I like to use baby steps, but I like to use things that work. And so I would say that there's some gentle things that they can do, just by cutting out grains and by doing a meat and vegetable diet. That is a big detoxifier, which would be amazing for them. Just by exercising. Exercising is the big panacea that helps everything, as long as they're able to exercise, or use a rebounder, do jumping jacks, to get your lymph moving.
Right.
So I wouldn't necessarily recommend using some of these more potent tinctures, but there are some things along those paths or along those routes that can be used very safely. Taking activated charcoal can be great for binding up molds,
Oh, good.
stuff like that.
So what about greens? Like if people don't get enough greens in their diet, they sell those raw greens all concentrated down, and it says on there that there are vitamins and minerals higher than normal sources. Is this a good thing to recommend to people?
For people who aren't getting their greens, it is,
Okay.
and it's all about baby steps, because if someone's eating the SAD diet, the SAD diet, or the standard American diet, it's going to be really hard to get them to a paleo diet or a ketogenic diet or one of those. And so you do have to go in baby steps. So the first thing that I'll say is, okay, we're going to go gluten-free, and you just replace everything that you normally consume that's gluten with a gluten-free product, just to get them, then they start to feel better, they start to realize how much inflammation that they have. But a lot of those gluten-free products have a lot of sugar in them, or they've got other grains which aren't great for them, or whatever. And so then it's moving away from the pastas and the breads and getting more into meat and veggies. And if they don't like veggies, then using one of those powders that you talked about, just to start to change the palate, which can
Yes.
happen over the course of months, so that they can have more of a tendency towards those vegetables.
Yes, that's my challenge, is getting people off of wheat. So I'll do like a 2-week challenge to get off of the grains, and that's too much. They just have to think about getting off the wheat and slowly. So
Right.
you try to go all at one time and they can't handle that. So that's a good suggestion, to just do it gluten free. I like
Yeah,
that.
it's all about the baby steps, and like it's about meeting people where they're at and saying, okay, how do we take this next step, so it's not so stressful for you. I have people who are like, okay, like, what do we need to do here? I'm really excited. I'm like, okay, great. Food elimination diet would be ideal. And if it's too much for them to, start eliminating the top 10 food allergens for them, they're not going to do it. They're not going to come back. They're not going to have success. And so, you have to meet the person where they're at, as you know.
Yes, yes. Most of the time, it's about 10% that will do the whole thing, and the most of them will not. They'll do it halfway.
Right.
So I have to work with that, right?
Mm-hmm. And also, oftentimes with the people that I see, who have chronic fatigue and are so sick, I tell them, I say, yes, it's really important for you to get rid of gluten and dairy out of your diet. But right now you have 20 nails in the bottom of your foot. And we can pull out that gluten nail and we can pull out that dairy nail, but it's going to get you, 5 or 10% improvement. But if
Wow.
we pull out that mold nail, or we pull out that heavy metal nail, or we pull out that Bartonella nail, that's going to get you 20, 30, 40, 50% improvement. And so let's figure out what you can do that's going to give you the biggest bang for the buck. And then knowing that you're going to be so much more successful when you get rid of that gluten nail and that dairy nail and you go paleo.
Yes. I read in your book that you go for the low-lying fruits. What does that mean?
So usually that's referring more to infections, where we're looking for the the biggest bang for the buck with the least amount of side effects.
Uh-huh.
Because it's really all about making progress. And oftentimes this process for my patients is quite complicated, and it really is 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But I tell them, as long as we're doing 2 steps forward and 1 step back, we're going to get there, because you're going to be a positive 1 step every single time you see me.
Right. Yes, moving forward. So if we talk just a little bit about sleep, how important sleep is. I have a hard time sleeping ever since menopause, and now I'm 57. I'm through that. And I've always slept well, and now I cannot sleep very well at all.
Yeah, sleep is so important. So many things happen when we sleep. The brain shrinks in size. You detoxify the brain when you sleep. You're producing hormones, growth hormone, all of these wonderful things. And so I find that I actually, and this wouldn't really be your case because have gone through menopause and you've got a different situation, but most of the time I get more people to sleep at night by giving them things in the morning. And that's because most sleep issues are a circadian rhythm dysfunction, where people's sleep-wake cycle is off. And so I give them things that are supposed to be high in the morning that are no longer high, like thyroid, B12, adrenal support. And that helps people have energy throughout the day, and then their energy can come down at night, and then they can sleep well at night. Now, if that doesn't work for people, and sometimes just by boosting adrenals and thyroid, that will end up producing, because the adrenal gland, when the ovaries go quiescent, so when they go quiet with menopause, the adrenal gland is supposed to take over production of the sex hormones. And when you support the adrenals and you support the thyroid, sometimes that's all you need in order to replenish those sex hormones and get you sleeping better.
And you support that with hormone therapy?
No, you mean in terms of the thyroid and the adrenals?
Well, the estrogen levels and the progesterone, and yeah, all of the levels of the hormones.
So a couple of things can happen. So sometimes all you need to do is support the adrenals with a product like the Adrenal PX that I recommend. That's a Luthero root. By supporting the adrenals with maybe adrenal cortex or maybe some other vitamins. So by supporting the thyroid, because there is this beautiful dance that exists between the thyroid, the adrenals, and the gonads, the ovaries in women and the testicles in men, and they all need to be there to support each other. And they all compensate if somebody steps out of the dance, like the ovaries do during menopause. So I'm saying that sometimes you can just support the adrenals and thyroid, and that will take care of any sort of estrogen and progesterone issues. Now, if that doesn't work, then women who are postmenopausal, who are having issues sleeping, they need progesterone to fall asleep, and they need estrogen to stay asleep. And I always like to start low, and I like to go slow. And I have a whole section, as you might have read in the book, on how to be safe and how to prescribe, how to take these bioidentical hormones to make sure that you're as safe as possible. But just to give you an example kind of on the progesterone, estrogen sort of thing is that, progesterone start people off at like 25 milligrams orally at night and then increase up slowly every 3 nights or so until they're falling asleep without a problem. And then with the estrogen, we give it topically for reasons I'll talk about in a second, but same sort of thing every couple of days to a week, increasing by a little bit topically every night until the woman is falling asleep through the night. And sometimes you can also give things like 5-HTP and GABA and lemon balm and theanine and a bunch of relaxing things, phosphatidylserine in the evening in some of these complexes that I like to kind of initiate the process so that you don't need as much bioidentical hormones. But it's this sort of ramp up that really gets people, you give them the minimum amount that they need. And that's always what I'm looking for too. That's why I use strong stuff, is because I want to give them the minimum amount that they need in order to be able to achieve success, resolve their symptoms, and eventually really get at the cause. Because there are women who go through menopause gracefully and don't have a lot of the symptoms, and usually it's because their adrenals are really robust. Now that's rare these days because of how stressful our lives are and all the toxicities that we have, but that is the ideal, that the adrenals are able to take over the sex hormone production.
Robust adrenals. I never hear about that. Always fatigued.
Right.
So I have a question from a client. She wanted me to ask you, which is worse, grains or sugar?
That is an excellent question. I guess it depends on the quantity. Grains will be converted to sugar, so maybe it's a trick question. And gluten in many of my patients can be worse than sugar, but they both will suppress the immune system. They both will cause fatigue. But if somebody is eating natural sugars like fruits, sometimes that's less of an issue for people, unless they have things like yeast and whatnot that are easily susceptible to any kind of sugar. But that is a great question, and I would say it's really individualized, and I would have to see what the person is eating. If they have a favorite food that they really can't give up, I would negotiate with them, and I would say, if you, gosh, that's
because it would be ice cream with this one. I feel like ice cream, and she loves her toast in the morning. So I feel like the ice cream is a bigger problem with the dairy and the sugar than the toast. But that's why I asked, because I know you refer to gluten like glue,
right.
Glue in the intestines. And that's how I explain it to my clients.
Right, and it's been so hybridized and modified that it's so foreign for our bodies. We've known gluten for about 10,000 years, wheat for about 10,000 years, and gluten has changed from like a 7 chromosome organism to now like a 49 chromosome organism. So I tell people it's like eating a sock.
Yeah, I like that. I liked reading that. That makes it easy to let people know this is why it's like eating a sock. Don't eat it.
And so what I would try to negotiate with this person is, I would agree with you. I would say, let's cut out the ice cream, but let's see if we can find a gluten-free bread that you can consume as toast instead of gluten bread.
Yeah, they're usually unhappy with the gluten-free breads, but they're getting better. The manufacturing companies are getting better with this.
They are. I like the Olivia company.
Oh.
And I like the Canyon Bakehouse Ranch, Canyon Ranch Bakehouse, one of those. You toast them and you can't tell the difference.
Oh, I love that. I have so many people that love their grains, and I read Wheat Belly, and I had to give up the grains.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're getting close to having to wrap this up, and I know that you have a very generous gift that you want to offer today, an offer of under $97. So I find that very generous because you were telling me what it was. Could you please tell us about that?
Absolutely. So, my book that you've been talking about is a free download right now on my website. And that book is normally, $18 paperback. It's $5 on a Kindle. So if you like to read that way, great, go for it. But if you want it for free, it's just a PDF download that you can get at my website, which is fixyourfatigue.org. That's fixyourfatigueforeverwithevanhirschmd.org. And hopefully that can help you.
Yeah, that's very generous offer. Thank you so much. I did take advantage of that. And I also have it on the Kindle, and I have the Kindle on the orange light because you talked about the blue light and the orange light. And I did do some of the bedtime habits, and I've been sleeping better. So thank you so much for that.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that if I do just support my adrenals and thyroid, I'll feel better.
I think so, and then if you needed something to take at night, like the product I mentioned in the book, the Insomnitol, that's a great one that could just maybe give you a little bit of a nudge to help you sleep even better.
Yes. Somnatol. Absolutely.
Mhm.
So thank you so much for being with us. And how would somebody get a hold of you if they wanted to talk to you or get on one of your Facebook Lives or Facebook groups? Is that possible?
Absolutely. So, yeah, I've got a Facebook group, which we now have over 800 people in. I just started about 6 months ago. And I do a Facebook Live in there every single week.
Oh, perfect.
And we just have wonderful dialogues in there. And um, what I do is I'll take, one of the questions that people have asked and I'll do a Facebook Live on it. And I'm working on creating an online course to really handhold people who can't afford my one-on-one coaching to take them through the whole process that I go through so that we can reach my goal of helping 100,000 people resolve their chronic fatigue.
What a fabulous goal. We're going to help you reach that goal.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being with Warrior Body, Warrior Mind today. It was such a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise, Janine, thanks so much for having me on.